Sicily, August 1943. Along a dusty military road choked with wreckage and burned-out trucks, Private Charles Brick Dawson wrestled with the steering wheel of his GMC CCKW. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't a commander. He had been a trucker in Ohio, hauling steel coils down Route 7, until the war swallowed him whole. Brick wasn't a fighter pilot or a tank gunner. He delivered everything those fighters needed to survive: food, ammunition, fuel, medical supplies. Yet the U.S. Army's motor convoys had a reputation. They were slow, exposed, and constantly ambushed. German reconnaissance aircraft circled like vultures. Mines lay hidden beneath the dirt. And worse, fast-moving Panzergrenadier raiding squads struck the roads like lightning, leaving convoys burning before help could arrive. Brick had seen too much of that already. Too many drivers dead in their seats, too many crates of morphine or artillery shells exploding into the sky. He had buried friends without even knowing their real first names. That morning, as he rolled into a temporary depot near Agrigento, an officer barked orders. "Get these supply trucks to the front by sundown. Fuel and rations, priority." 20 trucks, 3 miles of winding road, 0 escort. Again. But Brick had been thinking. Observing. Watching what failed, and what might work. He stepped forward, helmet in hand. "Sir," he said, throat tight, "if we move out like this, we won't make it." The lieutenant glared. "It's not your job to think, Dawson. It's your job to drive." But Brick didn't back down. "Not today. Sir, at least hear me out." Around them, engines rumbled. Exhaust fumes rolled low over the ground. Drivers checked maps, smoked cigarettes, muttered about fate. Brick drew a quick diagram in the dust with a stick, something so simple it looked ridiculous. Trucks arranged in tight formation, overlapping guns and fields of view. A convoy that moved like a pack of wolves, not scattered sheep. The idea had sparked in his head after the last disaster. Now he felt it burn. "If we do this," Brick said, heart pounding, "we cut the odds of being wiped out by 90%. A long silence. The lieutenant frowned, thinking. Maybe, just maybe, this trucker from Ohio was onto something. Brick waited for the verdict, his hands still shaking, the stick digging into the dirt like a lifeline. "Explain," the officer finally said. Brick swallowed hard, and began. Brick knelt beside his dusty drawing as the lieutenant reluctantly leaned closer. Other drivers gathered too, curious. Brick's voice steadied. "We keep the slowest trucks in the center. Fastest ones on the outside, like outriders." He pointed to his rough sketch, a staggered V-shape, not a long, helpless line. "We mount every spare .30 cal and bar on the outer trucks. Gunners watch every angle. No blind spots." A corporal scoffed. "We're truckers, not infantry." Brick fired back. "Then we'd better get good at fighting, or we'll keep dying as truckers." He continued. "When one truck gets hit, we don't stop. 2 outside trucks peel off to return fire, by time to pull the wounded out. The convoy keeps rolling. Momentum is survival." He drew arrows showing a constant forward push, trucks only meters apart. A formation tight enough to look reckless, maybe even foolish, to a traditional officer. The lieutenant scratched his chin. "If they hit the lead truck..." Brick was ready. "We rotate lead positions every few miles. Nobody stays exposed too long. And we use dust clouds to hide numbers. Enemy scouts won't know how many of us there really are." The airfield around them clattered with the sound of distant artillery. Time was racing. "You calling this, what?" the lieutenant asked. Brick grinned, the first time in days. "The wolf pack." It wasn't bravado. It was survival redefined. The lieutenant sighed, the decision weighing heavier than his steel helmet. Command hated improvisation. But command wasn't the one scraping charred bodies off the steering seats. Finally. "All right, Dawson. You run it. But if this fails..." "I know," Brick nodded. "It's on me." Within minutes, drivers scrambled into new positions. Gunners loaded belts of .30 caliber ammo. Trucks crept into staggered formation, engines growling in unison like a single animal ready to pounce. Brick climbed into his cab, fingers trembling on the wheel. He had just changed the way they would fight, or die. In his mirror, he saw the new convoy titan, steel and determination aligned. "Wolf Pack, move out!" the lieutenant shouted. The convoy roared forward, a dust-shrouded beast rolling into enemy country. If Brick's theory held, they'd get through. If not, this road would become their graveyard. The Wolf Pack convoy rolled into the Sicilian countryside, a snake of metal weaving between olive trees and jagged ravines. The sun burned mercilessly above, turning helmets into miniature ovens. Dust clung to every eyelash, every breath. Brick kept his knuckles white on the wheel. Every bend in the road, every rock outcropping looked like a waiting ambush. He'd been right before. He had to be right again. Over the radio, the lieutenant's clipped voice crackled. "Keep it tight. Gunners, eyes scanning." On Brick's roof, Private Santos manned a Browning M1919. His head swiveled like a hawk's, scanning ridgelines for the slightest movement. Kilometer after kilometer, nothing. Too quiet. Brick's instinct screamed. They were being watched. "Sir," he radioed. "This is where that German recon plane spotted us last week." A beat. Then, "Wolf Pack, prepare for contact." A gust of wind carried the faint scent of burning oil. Brick's heartbeat hammered in his ears. He pictured his friends from previous convoys, faces distorted in smoke and fire. Then it hit. A thunderous boom erupted ahead. The road beneath the lead truck exploded into a towering fireball. Shrapnel twirled through the air like deadly confetti. The lead truck skidded sideways, tires shredded. But for the first time, the convoy did not panic. As Brick planned, 2 outside trucks instantly peeled out. Their gunners opened sustained fire into the hillsides. Tracer rounds stitched the rocks, flushing German infantry into view. Santos shouted from above. "Movement right flank!" The Wolf Pack answered with a roar, trucks pivoting without hesitation, creating overlapping shields of fire. Dust and bullets mixed into a hellish haze. Brick sped forward, swerving around the crippled lead truck, keeping momentum alive. "They're adapting!" the lieutenant shouted. "This formation actually works!" But Brick wasn't celebrating. Not yet. Amid the chaos, a German half-track rumbled into view on a ridge, its mounted gun turning toward the convoy. Santos screamed. "Brick, that's a 20mm!" Brick jammed the pedal to the floor. They had survived the first strike. But the real attack was just beginning. The German half-track stabilized at the ridge, its 20mm autocannon lowering like a judge's gavel preparing to deliver a death sentence. One good burst and 3 trucks would be torn apart, fuel tanks, ammo crates, human bodies igniting in one catastrophic chain. Brick swallowed hard. "Santos! Light that thing up!" "I'm trying!" Santos yelled, firing a burst that pinged uselessly off the half-track's sloped armor. The enemy gunner took aim. Brick's mind split into calculations, distance, angle, engine power. He wasn't a soldier by training, but he knew machines. He understood how far he could push a truck before it shook itself apart. He wrenched the wheel and veered sharp left, leading the Wolf Pack downhill into a shallow, dry riverbed. The trucks behind him copied perfectly, tight as a school of fish fleeing a shark. Just in time. The 20mm gun unleashed fury, ripping into the road where they had been seconds before. Chunks of dirt and broken asphalt rained across truck canopies. Sparks cascaded as rounds ricocheted off cargo frames. Brick jammed the radio. "Wolf Pack, form 2, bite back!" Instantly, the trucks fanned into a staggered arc, all guns pointed upslope. "Give 'em hell!" the lieutenant's voice roared. 15 Browning guns thundered at once, an orchestra of violence. Dust swirled into choking clouds as bullets carved the ridge, hitting fuel cans, soldiers' helmets, boots kicking loose rock as they scrambled for cover. Brick saw the half-track gunner slump sideways, hit by someone's shot. The 20mm fell silent. But this wasn't over. Not even close. A whistle cut through the chaos, the kind that always came before something worse. Mortar rounds. The first one came screaming down, landing too close. The explosion flipped a trailer like it was made of paper. The shockwaves slapped Brick's truck sideways. Santos stuck behind the Browning, shouting in pure fear. "They're dialing us in!" Brick's breath tightened. He could already feel the next round finding them. He grabbed the mic. "All trucks, on me! We rushed the ridge!" The drivers hesitated. Charging toward the enemy felt insane. But Brick wasn't asking. He gunned the engine, hard. The wolf pack followed, loyal, desperate, united. Up the slope they charged, trucks roaring like beasts, bullets still flying. Brick forced one thought to the front of his mind. If we stop, we die. If we move, we might live. He slammed the pedal again. The ridge, and the Germans, were seconds away. Brick's truck clawed up the rocky slope, engine screaming in protest as its tires spat dirt and stone. Behind him, the convoy surged like a rising tide, headlights bouncing violently as trucks fought gravity in fear. They were no longer just delivering supplies. They were an attack force. German soldiers scrambled to reposition. This wasn't how ambushes worked. Trucks weren't supposed to come at you. They were supposed to freeze, burn, and die. Machine gun fire spat from the ridge, peppering Brick's windshield with white-hot sparks. Glass cracked into a spiderweb. One glance up and he saw Santos, face grim, firing controlled bursts like a man possessed. A mortar team near the top struggled to adjust their weapon, suddenly aware they were about to be overrun by a cavalry charge of angry, heavily armed trucks. Brick gritted his teeth. 10 more seconds, hold on! A mortar round dropped short, detonating just beside a trailing truck. The blast flipped the vehicle onto its side. The driver was thrown clear, tumbling like a rag doll down the slope. Brick felt his stomach drop. Every casualty was a dagger to the gut, but the line couldn't stop. Not now. They breached the ridge. The trucks fanned out on open ground, slamming brakes and spinning in a circular perimeter. Gunners raked the German positions at point-blank range. Steel, smoke, and screams collided in a frantic blur. Brick leapt from his cab as German infantry broke and ran. The lieutenant yelled over the gunfire. "Dawson, where the hell did you learn this?" Brick's answer was simple. "On the job." Within minutes, the surviving Germans abandoned the position entirely, leaving behind broken weapons and the smoking hulk of the half-track. The hillside fell silent, except for the ticking of overheated engines and the ragged breathing of men who had just stared death down and refused to blink. Brick surveyed the aftermath: holes in truck radiators, shredded fenders, blood on door panels, but the cargo was intact. Most of the drivers were alive. They had done the impossible. For the first time, Brick allowed himself to exhale, long and shaking. He had trusted his instincts, and the convoy had trusted him. But as medics tended the wounded and trucks regrouped, a chilling realization settled into Brick's mind. If the Germans learned this tactic too, the next ambush would be deadlier. And the wolf pack's real test was still waiting, somewhere up the road. The convoy rolled onward, each truck bearing new scars, bullet dents, scorched paint, shattered mirrors. Yet spirits were higher than they'd been in weeks. Drivers who once stared at the road in fear now sat taller behind their wheels. They had survived what should have been a massacre. Word spread fast. By the time the wolf pack reached the Ford depot that evening, officers were already waiting, curious, skeptical, and wide-eyed when they saw the cargo virtually untouched. Fuel barrels, ammunition crates, rations for thousands of frontline troops. A bespectacled intelligence major stepped forward, clipboard trembling slightly in his hand. "You're Dawson," he said, not a question. Brick wiped grease from his fingers onto his trousers. "Yes, sir." The major scanned his reports. "Losses, 90% lower than previous convoys." Drivers nearby grinned, pride warming their exhaustion. The major continued. "How did you manage that? Did you have armored escort?" Air support? Brick shrugged. Just trucks, sir. And a plan. The major stared at him as though he just confessed to magic. The lieutenant stepped in. Dawson reorganized the formation. The men call it the Wolf Pack. That name, rough and sharp, seemed to settle into the major's thoughts. A convoy that fights back, he murmured. Offense as defense. Brick didn't feel like a hero. His mind still replayed the overturned truck, the driver tumbling down the slope. He saw bullets whizzing inches from Santos's head. The faces of Germans who had never expected death to roar up the hill at them. Survival came with a cost. As night settled, the drivers set up camp. Mechanics worked under dim lanterns, patching holes with whatever they could weld or hammer into place. Gunners cleaned their weapons in silence. Santos lit a cigarette with shaking hands. You think the brass will make us do this again? He asked, smoke curling from his lips. Brick stared into the darkness beyond the trucks, imagining eyes watching from the hills. They already are, he said quietly. Indeed, new radio orders arrived before dawn. Tomorrow, a longer route. More supplies. More risk. The Axis wasn't stupid. Their next ambush would be bigger. Smarter. Deadlier. Brick folded the message and shoved it in his pocket. The Wolf Pack had proven they could break through once. Now they just had to survive doing it again, and again, until the war was done. Dawn arrived with a blood-orange sun rising over twisted fig trees and crumbling farmhouses. Engines coughed awake one by one, belching thick smoke into the cool air. Men stretched sore backs, hands blistered from gripping wheels and machine guns too long. Brick reviewed the new map spread across his hood. The route ahead wound through tight mountain passes, a perfect killing zone. The Germans wouldn't make the same mistakes twice. He placed stones on the map marking likely ambush sites. Other drivers gathered around, listening without interruption now. Brick wasn't just another man in a truck anymore. He was the one who'd brought them home. We keep formation tighter today, Brick instructed. Think of us like a fist, not fingers. They tried to break one of us, we hit back with everything. Santos pointed to a narrow gorge midway along the road. That spot looks ugly. Brick nodded grimly. They'll go for a rolling blockade. Hit the front and back at the same time, trap us in. The lieutenant leaned in. Options? We take the high side whenever possible. And we rig surprises of our own. That sparked interest. Brick explained. Grenades on ropes, tied to cargo hooks. If infantry tries to swarm us, we yank and drop gifts on their heads. The drivers laughed darkly, gallows humor, but necessary. Everyone understood, ingenuity had kept them alive so far. As they prepared to move out, a British sapper officer approached. Heard you lot think you're wolves, he said with a smirk. Brick replied simply. We hunt what hunts us. The Brit nodded, suddenly serious. Well, good hunting. The convoy rolled into motion, engines harmonizing into a low rumble. The road narrowed quickly, stone cliffs pressing in like jaws. Overhead, hawks circled, or were those enemy scouts? Brick couldn't shake the feeling of being prey again. Then, as the lead trucks rounded a hairpin turn, a shot cracked from the cliffs. A truck in the rear erupted in sparks, its tires shredded by a sniper round. It lurched, skidding sideways. Contact! Rear! Santos bellowed. Before Brick could react, an explosion thundered from the front, a mine tossing the lead vehicle off its wheels. Dust swallowed the world. The convoy was boxed in exactly as Brick predicted. But unlike the last time, the Germans had brought something new. Brick heard a mechanical growl echoing down the cliffs. Something large. Something armored. The wolf pack was cornered. And the trap was closing. From the shadows between two limestone boulders, a German armored car roared forward. Tires kicking rocks into the air, turrets swiveling hungrily. Its heavy machine guns spat fire down the line, bullets ripping through canvas and steel. Men dove for cover behind their own trucks, the sound of tearing metal drowning out their shouts. Brick grabbed the radio, voice cracking. Front gunners, suppress that gun! Rear trucks, get that sniper spotted! Santos was already firing, burst hammering into the armored car's hull. Ricochets snapped through the air like angry insects. The enemy vehicle continued advancing, grinding closer, confident it could chew the convoy apart. Brick's mind raced. The trucks were trapped between a destroyed lead vehicle and the jagged drop at their backs. A perfect kill box, unless someone changed the rules. He slammed the truck into reverse, turning sharply into a rocky slope that would make any sane driver panic. "Brick, what the hell are you doing?" Santos yelled. "Buying us room!" The engine growled as tires clawed for grip. The truck lurched sideways, scraping against limestone, sparks cascading like fireworks. Suddenly, new sight lines opened. Santos now had a clear shot at the armored car's exposed wheels. "Take them!" Brick shouted. Santos squeezed the trigger. A perfect burst. Rubber exploded. The armored car lurched, skid turning into a violent spin before it slammed broadside into the cliff with a sickening crunch. Before the crew inside could bail out, another Wolf-Pack gunner stitched the hull with rounds, silencing it for good. But the ambush wasn't finished. German infantry charged in waves from the canyon walls, grenades raised. They expected chaos. Panicked men running. Trucks burning. Instead, they faced a formation of wolves. Brick yanked one of the rope trigger grenade traps. A cluster of grenades dropped onto the advancing troops. Smoke, heat, screams erupted as the blast broke their line. "Push forward!" the lieutenant roared. Engines revved. The truck surged as a single organism, crushing rocks and fear alike. Gunners provided a constant barrage, forcing the Germans to scatter or be cut down. The convoy punched through the ambush, battered but alive. Minutes later, silence fell behind them. Just wind and the ticking of engines. Santos let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "Brick, that was crazy." Brick's hands trembled on the wheel. "Crazy's better than dead." They pushed on, bruised, bandaged, but undefeated. The Wolf-Pack had survived again. But there was no applause. No medals waiting. Only another road. Another chance to die tomorrow. By nightfall, the Wolf-Pack had finally rolled into the forward supply depot. The trucks were battered, tires half shredded, canvas torn, engines smoking, but the cargo was intact. Rations, ammunition, fuel, every crate accounted for. The camp erupted in whispers as soldiers and officers alike saw the convoy pull in. Brick climbed down from his cab, knees stiff, face smeared with dirt and sweat. Santos and the other drivers followed, weary but grinning. An army logistics officer approached, eyes wide behind thick glasses. "You did what?" he asked, incredulous. "How did you keep 90% of your supplies moving through a kill zone like that?" Brick shrugged, exhausted. "Simple," he said. "We move like wolves, not sheep." Word of the Wolf-Pack spread quickly. Other convoy commanders began to adopt Brick's tactics: staggered V formations, rotating lead trucks, overlapping fields of fire, and improvised traps. Losses dropped dramatically. What was once a nightmare of burned trucks and dead drivers became a repeatable, survivable system. Brick never asked for credit. He wasn't looking for glory. He only wanted to see his friends survive the next trip. But the army noticed, and soon logistics officers from Sicily to mainland Italy were implementing the method across the theater. Santos clapped him on the shoulder. "You saved lives, Brick." "More than you know." Brick looked at the trucks resting in the fading twilight. Each dent, each scorch mark told a story, of courage, of luck, and of a bit of insane thinking that had turned tragedy into survival. He thought of the soldiers on the front lines who depended on these supplies. Every ration, every shell, every gallon of fuel could mean the difference between holding the line and retreating under fire. That thought, more than medals or recognition, was enough. The Wolf-Pack would continue to roll, battle after battle, mile after mile. And each successful convoy would reinforce the truth that ingenuity, courage, and a stubborn refusal to accept standard procedure could change the course of a war. Brick wiped his face, lit a cigarette, and took a long drag. The stars blinked overhead, indifferent witnesses to the chaos below. The war would rage on, but now, thanks to one trucker and his ridiculous idea, it would rage on with a fighting chance.